first ever perfSONAR day. I'm Andy Lake. I'm from ESNet. I've been one of the perfSONAR developers for quite a while, and one of multiple leads on the project. So this is part of the Internet 2 TechEXtra program. So we appreciate basically the Internet 2 giving us a chance to talk to you guys here today. We've talked about doing this for quite a while. Obviously, 2020 is a little bit different, so we had a little bit of a forcing function this year. But I think anyways, we've been able to put together a pretty good schedule of things. Yeah, so I guess we can kind of jump into that. But first, just a few logistical items. So all of you, when you enter, are muted. You do kind of on cue. You have the, I heard a noise, but you do have the ability to unmute. So, obviously with great power comes great responsibility. So try to use that only when you need to talk. And, we want to limit background noise when people are presenting. If you have questions, essentially the setup we have is put your questions into the Zoom chat. The speaker, like myself, I won't see them like right now while I'm talking, but we have moderators assigned that will watch the chat, and they will either get the speaker's attention at a good time and ask it for you, or if you want to just indicate that you have a question and then unmute yourself once the moderator gets the speaker's attention, they can call on you and you can do so then. So that's basically our system for not having microphones to walk up to like we usually do at TechEx. The other aspect we have going on today is you'll notice you should see a breakout rooms, like 4 squares on the bottom of your Zoom screen. So we're going to have those open throughout the day. If you click on those, there's some that are dedicated just to like socializing. If you want to go have some side chats with people or things like that, you can do that. We'll also be using those at lunchtime. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But those are available just to kind of simulate side discussions and things like that as best as we can. And obviously, if you experience any problems throughout the day with any of this, the email there, meetings@internet2.edu, feel free to use that to get some help if you need it. So those are kind of the key housekeeping items. So the breakout rooms that I mentioned, as I already said, they're open throughout the day, but at lunchtime especially, we'll be using those, which will kind of be more a way to do an open discussion format. So I think I kind of went through the logistics of that, but if you click that icon, you'll see a bunch of rooms listed, and then the icon there kind of shows you how to hover over. There's the number of participants. If you hover over it, you can actually click join and pick your breakout room. That's a relatively new feature, so you may not have used it. If you're not seeing the breakout room icon, or that's not working the way we listed there, you might want to double check that your Zoom client is updated. If for whatever reason you can't get in and you don't want to mess around with updating your Zoom client, we do have the power to move people over if we need to, but obviously we want to limit that because we have over 200 people registered, and that would take quite a while to move 200 people around. So for the lunchtime breakouts that I mentioned, you'll see that there's a bunch of rooms with people's names by them. Those correspond to the developers that'll kind of be hosting the room. So you'll see next to the names here and on your registration, there was kind of some I guess themes you could say put next to the developers' names. That's kind of areas of expertise, I guess you could call them, about current and potentially future things where we're doing with perfSONAR. So if you're interested in any of those topics, that might be a good room for you guys to join. I think we're limited to 40 people per room. So if you can, at least to start off with, maybe try to join the room you registered for, but we are expecting people will hop around, or if you don't remember, that's totally fine. Given the number of people that registered, it is possible we might fill all the rooms. So there is a couple extra socialization rooms and things like that where people can get together. So when you see the rooms, they'll be named for the developer. So, if you want to join my room, I'm Andy, click join Andy, same with all the names. And so then last thing, that's all about today. So the Internet 2 TechEXtra, there's a bunch of events kind of going on over the next few months since you spread it out. And so there's a couple more listed here. One about route origin validation in the cloud. That's in a couple weeks, I guess, a little bit less. And then on December 3rd, there's one on continuous integration, continuous delivery, and developing NSO. So please register for any of those if you are interested. And just a quick special thanks to all of the Internet 2 planning staff. There's kind of a lot of work that goes into putting these together. So Susan, Kelly, Carly, Mari, and Tracy really helped kind of get us developers get our act together. So assuming things go smoothly, it's to their credit. If we mess anything up, it's probably because we didn't listen to them. So big thanks to them, and also big thanks to the speakers and moderators taking the time to put together today's content and keep things going. And kind of last but certainly not least, thanks to everybody who joined. The reason we were able to do these types of things is we get really good turnout, and we have a really engaged and great community. And I think we had over 220 people register. So we're super happy with that turnout, and can't wait to kind of hear your questions and discussion and things like that today. Before I go any further, I just wanted to pause for a second. I know I went over a lot of logistics and things like that. Are there any questions? Feel free to put those into the Zoom chat. Pause for a second here, or if there were any put in there while I was talking. Okay, so I'm not hearing the moderator say anything, so I'm gonna keep going. Obviously, if you have any more questions, I'll try and pause a couple more times as we go, and can answer your questions there. All right, so today's schedule. So if I confuse you with any of those logistics, hopefully this will anchor you back to where we are in the schedule. So I'm going to kick us off today with a welcome and the usual project update. We like to call that the usual TechEx talk, because when we have a normal TechEx year, we pretty much always give a project update there and go through some of the things that we're expecting to happen over the next few months or year, things like that. So I'll be talking about a little bit to begin with, and then we have a whole day that gets to do a deeper dive into some of the stuff I'm talking about, and some additional stuff that I'm not going to be talking about in the update, but that has been going on and is really kind of interesting in the perfSONAR space. So kind of really look forward to that. And we have a bunch of announcements for you today. So I was going to kick off with one big one you may have already noticed if you're paying close attention to my slides. We have a revised logo here. If you go to our website, I think that will be updated on the website pretty soon. I know Mark, who is our marketing department I mentioned here, Mark Fite from Internet 2, kind of helped put this together. And I didn't have him on the special thanks page, but he has also kind of helped shepherd all of this along, in addition to doing all his normal development work. So we have to do double duty here on the perfSONAR team. So yeah, we have a new logo. So I've got a couple more announcements today, but that's the first one to kick off. So all your old swag that you have with the old logo, sorry, it's outdated, but I guess you can call it retro. So maybe it's a little bit cooler now than it used to be. So we have that. So before I get into the usual update, looking at the registration list, we actually are really excited to see there's a bunch of new people that I'm not sure everybody even has perfSONAR nodes and things like that. So we're always happy to reach out to new communities and things like that. So I just want to talk for a few minutes about kind of what perfSONAR is, why it exists, and all that. So probably a lot of you, if you've been to perfSONAR talks before, have seen some variation of this slide. So what is perfSONAR? So we're an open source collaboration. It's led by 5 organizations, so ESNet, JAIONT, Indiana University, Internet 2, and the University of Michigan. You'll see their logos at the bottom of all the slides here today. They're the ones who kind of lead the project and make sure things hum along, have dedicated development and management resources to keep the project going. Obviously, since we're open source, we take contributions from lots of other organizations and try to be very kind of open and try to engage a lot with the community. So even though they kind of lead the effort, it's really a broader, I think, collaboration than just that. And the ultimate goal of perfSONAR is to provide some software that allow network measurements between organizations, in particular to help troubleshoot network issues. So usually when you're talking network issues, you can think of things as hard and soft failures. So hard failures are generally pretty well understood, where basic connectivity to the network just fails. So you can think of a fiber cut or things like that, right? Like I was moving packets and now I'm not. Soft failures are a little bit more subtle, and that's really kind of where perfSONAR finds its niche, which is I'm able to connect to places, but performance is maybe just poor. And so we kind of I have some metrics kind of listed there, which I kind of consider our bread and butter as far as perfSONAR goes, but they're certainly not limited to those things. As you'll see today, we have some really great talks about some other ways people are using perfSONAR and some other things they're measuring. But the throughput, packet loss, one-way latency, and trace route, basically running those on a regular basis. perfSONAR provides the tools to do that. store them, graph them, kind of look at them and kind of identify patterns in what's going on. So who is using perfSONAR? I think this is kind of one of the other advantages of perfSONAR is that we've been able to, thanks to everyone here, build a pretty wide deployment globally. So we have over 2,000 instances running all over the world. I think we're on 6 continents. We still haven't got that Antarctica one, but maybe someday. So, I mean, I guess the point is when you bring up a perfSONAR node, you generally have a bunch of locations that you can test to kind of right out of the gate, which is really helpful for this type of thing. So a brief history, perfSONAR has been around long enough that we actually have to break the timeline now into 2 pictures. And I think we actually have to add a couple more slots here. This is on our website. But the name perfSONAR has been around for about 15 years. I think April was technically the 15th anniversary of that. We didn't have a big celebration. I guess maybe today is kind of the 15th anniversary celebration. I don't know what all of us were doing in April of this year that had us so distracted. But yeah, so it's been around for quite a while, and we've kind of been able to build out the software in that time, and it's had quite a few facelifts and things like that over that time. But it's been able to last a while, and I think to its testament, we've been able to kind of take lessons from those 15 years, and the software, I think, keeps getting better and better. So how does it all work? I think one thing that maybe is not always clear to people is that perfSONAR is not really just one piece of software. It's a whole bunch of different smaller pieces that we bring together in a way to kind of help do these network measurements and provide all the tools you need to get the information out of them that you want. So we as the perfSONAR development team don't necessarily maintain all of them. We use some open source off the shelf items, particularly in that tools layer. So things like iperf and NetTCP and ping and tracepath and traceroute, obviously we don't write those. Those are just kind of standard tools that are out there. Now, some of them we do maintain. So, for example, iperf3 is developed mostly at ESNet. OWAMP and TWAMP are something we directly maintain as part of the project. So we have a hand in the code of those tools. And then kind of above that, we add some layers to help use those tools. I think at the center of everything, and we'll talk about it a lot today, is the pscheduler component. It's the one that handles the scheduling and running of those measurements. And once it gets the results, it handles storing those so we can use them later in the visualizations and things like that. If you move up the stack, I'll be talking a lot about the archiving and visualization layers layer. And we also, I think a big important part is actually that orange box, which is the configuration layer. So this is really where a lot of the collaboration occurs, which is really, I think, important to the perfSONAR use case. Is you can define a set of tests. People from different organizations can point at that common configuration and kind of build these dashboards and things like that that show these tests across organizations. I think it's helpful beyond just listening to components to actually look at a typical workflow of perfSONAR and how people generally use it. So this is not the only way you have to use it, but I think this is probably the most common case with the tools that we provide. We have a component called MadDash, which basically is a web front end that provides these grids like you'll see here that show, try to summarize essentially tests between different endpoints that you've configured. So this one is one from ESNet. It's showing some tests between basically different labs on ESNet and some of our internal ESNet testers. You'll see there's all these half red boxes, which mean packet loss coming from ANL to ESNet. We're seeing some, it's greater than 0 essentially. And so basically then you can click on this, get some line graphs to get some more information about what's going on. And so this is kind of where some of the expertise needs to come in to actually interpret these graphs. So you'll see there's some asymmetry here and things like that. One of the big themes that we'll be talking about today is how we can improve this and add some more advanced workflows and analysis and things like that to the everyday user. We've had some power users that have been very successful in doing kind of different things with that, and we kind of want to bring that to the masses. So I in particular have a talk this afternoon that'll talk about some of that, and a couple of the other talks we'll talk about adapting this to some other use cases. But that's the main workflow I think most people think of when they think of perfSONAR these days. So I guess just kind of one last note. You saw the map of perfSONAR nodes. If your institution isn't running a perfSONAR node, please consider it. I hope you'll be able to sit through a lot of the talks today, and if not already, it'll help you convince you that this is a valuable thing to do. I think with people working remotely, more or at least just as much as ever, it's important to make sure our networks are performing adequately. Right. And so perfSONAR is a relatively low cost way to help do that and make sure things are running the way they need to run. So please consider running a public perfSONAR node if you aren't already. And so I guess I can take a pause again there. Doing okay on time. I don't know if there's any questions about any of that. If not, I'll go into the project update.
We're clear, Andy. People are asking if the slides are available, but I think we'll make those available at the breaks, probably for the slides that have been done or at the end of the day.
Yep, I think that's the plan, is to gather them all together. I don't know that we have them all in one place yet, but the plan is to make all the slides from today available. So good question. So, okay, well then I will power ahead. So this is the like I said, the usual perfSONAR update and usual TechEx talk. I've got a couple more announcements to make. So kick off with one big one, which is 4.3.0. Our next version is going to release today. Now, you don't need to run in a panic and check your perfSONAR nodes. We did not release it before this conference when all the developers are busy giving presentations, and a lot of our users are, busy watching this and not their nodes. We don't expect any issues, but it's 2020. We didn't want to tempt fate. So we will be pressing the proverbial green button after today, or after the talks today, to release that out to the world. But that's been in beta now for a few weeks. We got lots of good feedback from people. Went pretty smooth, so we're good to release that today. So thank you everyone who helped test that. So in terms of things that are coming out in this release, it's not as big feature-wise as some of our previous releases, but there's a lot of work that's kind of gone into on the back end to help stabilize and improve things. The biggest of which is the Python 3 migration. We had to finish that up for some of the components. So we've gone through and done that, which again, maybe frontward facing doesn't seem like a huge change, but actually did require quite a bit of changes on the back end to make sure everything still functioned the way it was supposed to. Another big change is we have a web interface that helps define these configurations called psconfig webadmin. It's added some new features. I'm not going to go into too much detail into those because luckily right after my talk, Michael Johnson's going to be going into that in depth. Another advantage of being able to do this remotely and having some extra time. So then the couple other changes that we've had are some changes to pScheduler. So we've added a couple new tools I'll talk about, and something called the batch processor that allows you to kind of submit multiple tasks at the same time that relate to each other. So some of those pScheduler version features to highlight, I already mentioned the Python 3 stuff. There's some other fixes as well that improve the scheduling of heavy load systems. We also added some stuff to the limit system. So if you're not familiar, pScheduler has something called the limit system, which defines who's allowed to run tests to you. So we've added some more features and operators there to allow you to define some richer set of rules. And then the last thing, instead of just working with NTP, pScheduler can actually now detect Crony, which allows it to work with both of those. Now we haven't updated like the toolkit web interface and all that, so don't run off and hope you can configure Crony that way. But we do, at least for like test points and just pScheduler deployments, have the ability to work with that now. In terms of new plugins, so there's been a couple that have been developed. So there's one using a tool called S3. So the tool itself was developed by an organization called Wasabi. They had a pretty big presence at TechEXtra last year. And basically what it does is test throughput to a bunch of different cloud providers. So the University of Michigan actually had some students that I think developed a plugin for that, so it could talk to pScheduler. So that's available as part of this. We also have support now in our throughput test for another tool called Ether. I believe that was developed by the tool itself, again, I think comes from Microsoft, but kind of the perfSONAR development team worked with SDSC and I think maybe the Pacific Research Platform guys to implement that. So that's now available. And just a note, pScheduler plugins are one of the best ways to get involved in perfSONAR. So if you have more ideas or are looking for student projects or just projects yourself, this is a great way to kind of hook into perfSONAR We've got a pretty good framework for defining these, and it can add some great value to the whole suite of tools for not a ton of effort. So yeah, just be thinking about that. And so then the last thing is this thing called the batch processor, which allows you to execute multiple pscheduler tasks as a group. So you can basically define if you want to run certain things in parallel, do different transforms on them and things like that. Instead of requesting things one by one, it'll kind of make sure that they are scheduled, relative to each other. So that's available in our API now. I know Internet 2 has been using it quite a bit internally for some of their performance assurance service work, and hoping other people will get benefits out of it as well. And so then my last announcement in this presentation is that we have a new version of the lookup service that has been deployed out. I think it actually went out Friday night. So it's got a bunch of changes. So we've actually been doing a couple trial runs of this over the past month or so. So if you've seen any emails go across the list about that, we've kind of been just testing it out to make sure nothing broke. So the perfSONAR lookup service is actually mainly a central service that we run as the development team, where I showed that map earlier of all the dots. That's how we build that out. So basically, perfSONAR nodes have the ability to register their existence to others, so people can know how to test to them. So we've switched out the backend to be Elasticsearch. It used to be MongoDB. And we have a read-only kind of API endpoint open that allows people to use the Elasticsearch interface to query that. So we're hoping to build out some cool new visualizations based off of that, and really allows us to do a lot more powerful queries of that. If you're using the old interface for something, it's completely backward compatible with the old LS API. We have an endpoint for that. That's why all your hosts can still register without any changes or anything like that. So there's no action needed on toolkits to start using this. If you look at the map today, it's already been using it. So again, thanks for the patience while we tested this over the past month or so, but that is now available. And so then my last slide, usually I spend a lot more time on this during the update, but since we have a full day, we'll be pretty much talking about this throughout the day. So over the next few months, you will probably expect to see a couple, I guess I'll call them smaller releases. We might not even bump the number. It might just be 4.3. Whatever version we're on at that time, that run on a couple newer versions of the OSs. So CentOS 8, Ubuntu 20, and Debian 10. We've actually been started testing that internally. That's keeping pace with the OS providers, and as they release things and change things, we want to be compatible with that as well. And then over the next year, there's going to be a big focus on, in particular, kind of our archiving and visualization aspects of perfSONAR. So I'll be talking about that in the afternoon session. We'll also be looking at things about better ways to leverage containerized deployments. We have a talk on that again this afternoon. And just as always, we're continuing to kind of expand and improve our existing services. So we've got a lot of great stuff. And again, we'll be talking about a lot of that today. So just to kind of wrap things up before I hand it over to Michael, here's a list of our mailing list that you can join if you're not already. perfSONAR announce, it's very low traffic. Things like the release announcements go there that I'll send out later today. And then we also have the perfSONAR user, which is much higher volume traffic, but that's a great place to kind of get in discussions and solve problems and things like that. So please join one or both of those if you're interested. And with that being said, I think we can hand stuff over, or we can kind of get things going. So just as things go, really take advantage of today to ask questions and learn, especially during those lunchtime sessions. And this is our first time doing an event, so be thinking about throughout how we can make this better, how you think you can get more value out of sessions like this, because we hope to, I think, maybe do more in the future if this goes well. So that's all from me. Any last questions before I hand it over?
Andy, I've got a couple for you. James Deaton would like to know which breakout would be good to talk about the new lookup service. Is there one specifically that someone's going to have more knowledge on than the others?
He can come to mine, so that's probably the best one. So.
And George Uhl is asking, with regards to looking ahead, is there any movement on improving alerting services?
That would be another great one to talk about in my lunchtime sessions. So, yeah. So.
Thank you, Andy.
I'm trying to steal everyone, but all right. Any other ones? Okay. Well, thank you.